The Harmon family moved into 447 Crescent Oak Drive on the third Saturday of October, when the maple trees had just begun surrendering their leaves to the wind. It was a beautiful colonial revival, 3 stories of cream-painted brick with black shutters and a wraparound porch that creaked in all the right places. The previous owners had left in what the realtor called unexpected circumstances, which Marcus Harmon understood to mean foreclosure or divorce, the twin engines of real estate opportunity. He didn't ask for details. The price was right, the schools were excellent, and his wife Linda had already fallen in love with the original crown molding. Their daughter Sophie was 7 years old, and she ran through the empty rooms with the boundless energy that children possess before the world teaches them to be afraid. Her footsteps echoed against the bare hardwood floors, and her laughter filled the hollow spaces where furniture would soon appear. Marcus watched her sprint from room to room, counting her treasures. A window seat in the upstairs hallway, a door that led to nowhere in the basement, a walk-in closet in the master bedroom that was larger than her room in their old apartment. "We're going to be happy here," Linda said, wrapping her arms around Marcus from behind as they stood in what would become their living room. Through the bay windows, they could see the long driveway winding through mature oak trees, the kind of trees that had witnessed generations of families come and go. Marcus kissed her forehead. "We already are." The security system was Linda's idea. She'd grown up in a neighborhood where break-ins were common, where the sound of glass shattering was just another note in the symphony of urban decay. Now that they finally had something worth protecting, she wanted the peace of mind that came with sensors and cameras and a panel by the door that glowed green to say all was well. Marcus hired a company called Secure Home Solutions, which came recommended by 3 different neighbors. The technician who arrived was a middle-aged man named Dale with a salt and pepper beard and a tool belt that jangled when he walked. He spent 2 days running wires through the walls and mounting small white sensors in the corners of every room. "Motion detectors in every space," Dale explained, showing Marcus the master control panel installed in the front hallway. "The system logs all activity with timestamps. You can see exactly when and where movement is detected, down to the second. Great for knowing when the kids get home from school, or if someone's moving around where they shouldn't be." The panel displayed a floor plan of the house, each room represented by a small icon. When Dale waved his hand in front of the living room sensor, the corresponding icon pulsed blue, and a timestamp appeared in the activity log. "Living room, motion detected 14 hours 32 minutes and 7 seconds. "The sensors are pretty sophisticated," Dale continued. "They can distinguish between a human-sized heat signature and, say, a cat. You won't get false alarms from pets or curtains blowing in the draft. If this thing triggers, something real is moving." Linda was satisfied. Marcus was satisfied. They signed the paperwork, received their login credentials for the mobile app, and watched Dale's van disappear down the driveway. For the first 3 weeks, the system performed exactly as promised. The log filled with the mundane poetry of family life. Kitchen, motion detected, 6 hours 15 minutes and 22 seconds when Marcus came down to make coffee. Sophie's room, motion detected, 7 hours 2 minutes and 14 seconds when their daughter began her morning routine. Front door, opened, 8 hours 17 minutes and 33 seconds when Linda left for work. The timestamps told the story of their days, a digital chronicle of coming and going, of breakfasts and dinners and bedtime rituals. Marcus developed a habit of checking the app before he went to sleep, scrolling through the day's activity log the way some people scroll through social media. It was comforting to see the rhythm of their lives reduced to neat rows of data. Everything had an explanation. Every movement had a source. It was on a Tuesday night, the 12th of November, that the pattern broke. Marcus was in bed, Linda already asleep beside him, when he opened the app for his nightly review. The log showed the usual evening entries. Living room at 20:15 when they'd watched television. Kitchen at 21:30, when Linda got a glass of water. Master bedroom at 22:45, when they'd retired for the night. But then there was something else. Basement, motion detected 3 hours 17 minutes and 42 seconds. Marcus stared at the entry. The basement was unfinished, used only for storage. No one had any reason to be down there at 3 in the morning. He scrolled down to see if there were additional entries and his stomach tightened. Stairs, motion detected, 3 hours 18 minutes and 15 seconds. First floor hallway, motion detected, 3 hours 18 minutes and 44 seconds. Living room, motion detected, 3 hours 19 minutes and 23 seconds. Dining room, motion detected, 3 hours 20 minutes and 1 second. Kitchen, motion detected, 3 hours 20 minutes and 38 seconds. First floor hallway, motion detected, 3 hours 21 minutes and 15 seconds. Stairs, motion detected 3 hours 21 minutes and 47 seconds. Second floor hallway, motion detected 3 hours 22 minutes and 19 seconds. The entry stopped there. Marcus calculated the time between each trigger. Roughly 30 to 40 seconds between rooms. The pace of someone walking. Not running, not hurrying. Walking calmly through his home in the dead of night. He got out of bed as quietly as he could and checked every room in the house. Every door was locked. Every window was latched. Sophie was asleep in her bed, her night light casting soft pink shadows on the wall. There was no one there. There had never been anyone there. He told himself it was a malfunction. A software glitch. The house was old and old houses did strange things. He made a mental note to call Secure Home Solutions in the morning and went back to bed. But he couldn't sleep. He lay in the darkness, watching the ceiling, listening to the house settle around him. And in the silence, he could have sworn he heard footsteps. The technician who came this time was not Dale. His name was Raymond, younger, with nervous eyes and a clipboard that he clutched like a shield. Marcus showed him the log entries and Raymond nodded slowly, his expression professionally neutral. "It does happen sometimes," Raymond said. "Electrical interference, temperature fluctuations, even mice in the walls can occasionally trip these sensors. Let me run a diagnostic." Technician service note, 11/13 site, 447 Crescent Oak Drive performed full system diagnostic. All sensors functioning within normal parameters. No hardware faults detected. Sensitivity settings verified at factory default. Unable to reproduce reported false triggers. Recommended customer monitor for 48 hours and report any additional anomalies. Chin. Marcus watched Raymond pack up his equipment and tried to feel reassured. The system was fine. The sensors were fine. Everything was fine. That night he stayed awake. He sat in the living room with the lights off, the security app open on his phone, and waited. The house was quiet. Linda and Sophie were asleep upstairs. The grandfather clock in the hallway ticked away the seconds and nothing happened. By 2:30 his eyelids were heavy. By 3 he was fighting to stay conscious. And then at 3 hours 14 minutes and 51 seconds, the basement sensor triggered. Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. He watched the app as the entries appeared, one after another, in perfect sequence. Basement, stairs, hallway, living room. He looked up from his phone into the living room where he was sitting, where the motion sensor in the corner was now blinking its tiny red confirmation light. Something had triggered it. Something was in the room with him. But there was nothing there. The room was empty. The shadows were still. No curtains moved, no shapes materialized from the darkness. And yet the sensor kept blinking, kept registering movement, as if something invisible was standing in the center of the room looking at him. The entries continued. Dining room. Kitchen. He followed the path with his eyes, tracking the invisible movement through rooms he couldn't see from where he sat. Then back to the hallway. Up the stairs. Second floor hallway. And then it stopped. Marcus ran upstairs, his heart pounding. He found the hallway empty, the doors to all the bedrooms closed. Sophie was still asleep. Linda was still asleep. He checked the security app one more time and saw the final entry. Master bedroom doorway, motion detected, 3 hours 22 minutes and 47 seconds. The sensor was still active. The little red light was still blinking. As if whatever had triggered it was still there, standing in the doorway of his bedroom, waiting. For 3 days Marcus said nothing to Linda. He told himself he was protecting her from unnecessary worry, but the truth was that he didn't know how to explain what he'd witnessed. How do you tell your wife that something invisible walks through your house every night? How do you describe a presence that exists only in timestamps and blinking lights? He began sleeping in shifts if he slept at all. During the day he functioned on caffeine and willpower, going through the motions of his remote consulting work while his mind churned with theories. Electrical interference, Raymond had said. Temperature fluctuations. Mice in the walls. Marcus researched each possibility obsessively, filling notebooks with calculations and hypotheses, trying to find a rational explanation that would let him sleep again. But every night at approximately the same time the pattern repeated. The basement sensor would trigger first, always between 3 and 3:30 in the morning. Then the stairs. Then the hallway. The living room, the dining room, the kitchen. Back through the hallway, up the stairs, down the second floor corridor. And always, it ended at the doorway to the master bedroom, where the sensor would continue blinking for exactly 17 minutes before falling silent. Marcus began keeping a log of his own, handwritten in a notebook he kept hidden in his desk drawer. Personal observation log, Harmon. November 14th, basement trigger 3 hours 22 minutes and 11 seconds. Full path completed by 3 hours 29 minutes and 33 seconds. Doorway sensor active for 17 minutes. Physically checked all entry points, secured. 11/15, basement trigger 3 hours 17 minutes and 55 seconds. Path identical. Timing consistent. Doorway sensor active 17 minutes. Set up phone to record hallway overnight. Footage shows nothing. November 16th, basement trigger 3 hours 24 minutes and 8 seconds. Same path. Same duration. Doorway sensor active 17 minutes. Installed additional camera in living room. Footage shows sensors activating with no visible source. November 17th, basement trigger 3 hours 19 minutes and 41 seconds. Attempted to intercept by standing in first floor hallway during event. Sensors triggered in rooms on either side of me, as if presence walked around me. Doorway sensor at end of path, 17 minutes exactly. On the 18th of November, Linda noticed something was wrong. Marcus had lost weight, his face had taken on a grayish pallor, and his hands trembled when he lifted his coffee cup. She found him in his office at 4 in the morning, staring at his laptop screen, scrolling through security logs with red-rimmed eyes. "Marcus, what's happening to you?" He tried to dismiss her concern, but the words wouldn't come. Instead he showed her the logs. He showed her his notebook. He showed her the videos he'd recorded, the ones where sensors blinked in sequence through empty rooms, tracking something that should not exist. Linda watched the footage 3 times. Her face cycled through disbelief, confusion, and finally a kind of cold recognition that Marcus didn't understand. When she spoke, her voice was very quiet. "We need to call someone else. Not the security company. Someone who knows about this kind of thing." "What kind of thing?" "I don't know. But my mother would have called it a haunting." Marcus wanted to argue, to insist on a rational explanation, but the words died in his throat. He'd spent a week searching for rationality and found nothing. Maybe it was time to consider other possibilities. They called a paranormal investigator named Dr. Ellen Vance, who had a PhD in psychology and a reputation for approaching unexplained phenomena with scientific rigor. She arrived on a gray morning, carrying cases of equipment and wearing an expression of professional skepticism that immediately put Marcus at ease. "I should be clear about my methodology," Dr. Vance said as she unpacked her gear in the living room. "I'm not a ghost hunter. I don't believe in spectral entities as a default explanation. What I do is investigate reports of anomalous activity using empirical observation and eliminate natural causes one by one. In 92% of my cases, we find a perfectly mundane explanation. Faulty wiring, infrasound from nearby construction, even carbon monoxide leaks that cause hallucinations." "And the other 8%? Linda asked. Dr. Vance paused, her hand resting on a device Marcus didn't recognize. "The other 8% remain unexplained. That doesn't mean they're supernatural. It means we haven't found the explanation yet." She set up electromagnetic field detectors in every room, alongside temperature monitors and audio recorders that could capture frequencies below human hearing. She reviewed Marcus's footage and his handwritten log, asking detailed questions about timing, sequence, and variations. She interviewed Sophie gently, asking if the little girl had noticed anything strange in the house, any odd feelings or experiences she couldn't explain. Sophie shook her head. "I like this house. It's quiet at night." Dr. Vance made a note and moved on. That night, they gathered in the living room to wait. Dr. Vance monitored her equipment while Marcus watched the security app and Linda tried to keep her breathing steady. The hours crawled by. The house was silent. At 3 hours 21 minutes and 3 seconds, the basement sensor triggered. "There," Marcus said, his voice cracking. "It's starting." Dr. Vance's instruments came alive. The EMF detector spiked dramatically, its needle swinging into the red zone. The temperature monitor in the basement dropped 7 degrees in less than a second. The audio recorder captured a low-frequency hum that none of them could hear with their naked ears. "Something's moving," Dr. Vance murmured, her eyes fixed on her equipment. "There's a localized electromagnetic disturbance moving from the basement toward the stairs. The temperature differential is consistent with, I don't know. I've never seen readings like this." They watched the security app as the sensors triggered in sequence. Basement, stairs, hallway. Dr. Vance tracked the invisible movement with her EMF detector, sweeping it through the empty air, following something that registered on her instruments but remained stubbornly invisible to the human eye. "It's here," she said as the living room sensor activated. "It's in this room with us." Marcus looked around frantically. You saw nothing. Linda pressed herself against the couch, her face pale. Dr. Vance stood in the center of the room, rotating slowly, her detector extended in front of her like a divining rod. The reading is strongest here, she said, pointing toward the corner near the bay windows. About 6 feet from the floor. If I didn't know better, I'd say I was picking up the electromagnetic signature of. Of what? Of a person. Standing right there. The sensor in the dining room triggered. Then the kitchen. The presence, whatever it was, continued its nightly walk, indifferent to their observation. Dr. Vance followed it with her equipment, calling out readings and observations that Marcus barely registered. His attention was fixed on the security app, watching the path complete itself, watching the final sensor trigger. Master bedroom doorway, motion detected, 3 hours 28 minutes and 51 seconds. They ran upstairs. The doorway sensor was blinking its red light, steady and relentless. Dr. Vance swept her EMF detector through the empty space of the doorway and gasped. The reading is off the scale. It's not moving anymore. Just standing here. In your doorway. They stood in the hallway staring at the empty threshold for 17 minutes. The sensor never stopped blinking. Dr. Vance's instruments never stopped registering an impossible presence. And then, exactly 17 minutes after the final trigger, everything went silent. The readings returned to normal. The sensor went dark. Dr. Vance packed up her equipment the next morning. Her hands were shaking. When she handed Marcus her preliminary report, her voice was barely above a whisper. Preliminary investigation report, Dr. Ellen Vance site, 447 Crescent Oak Drive date, November 19th. Summary of findings. I have conducted over 300 investigations of reported paranormal activity. In all my years of research, I have never encountered readings like those documented last night at this location. The electromagnetic signatures are consistent with a concentrated, mobile energy source roughly the size and shape of an adult human. The movement pattern is deliberate and repetitive, following the same path each night with minimal variation. The terminus point, master bedroom doorway, represents a stationary position maintained for exactly 17 minutes, during which the energy readings remain elevated. I cannot explain these findings within my current understanding of physics. I cannot identify a natural cause that would produce these specific effects. I cannot, in good conscience, recommend that this family continue to reside in this property until further investigation has been conducted. Recommendation: vacate immediately. Consult with clergy, historical researchers, or others who may have insight into the property's history. Note to self: I am genuinely frightened for the first time in my career. They did not vacate. Linda wanted to leave, but Marcus couldn't accept that they would abandon their home to something they couldn't even see. They had invested everything in this house, their savings, their hopes, their future. He refused to let shadows and sensor readings drive them out. Instead, they adapted. They installed blackout curtains in Sophie's room and told her the flashing lights were just the security system running tests. They began sleeping with their door closed, as if a wooden barrier could stop something that had no physical form. They stopped checking the app at night, choosing ignorance over the terror of watching the path complete itself. For a brief time, this willful blindness almost worked. Sophie continued to thrive at her new school. Linda returned to her routines, though she never quite lost the tension in her shoulders. Marcus threw himself into his work, staying up late enough that he could collapse into dreamless exhaustion before the witching hour arrived. But the presence did not care whether they watched. Every night it walked. On December 4th, Sophie came to breakfast with dark circles under her eyes. I couldn't sleep, she said, pushing her cereal around her bowl. There was someone walking in the hallway. Marcus and Linda exchanged a look. What do you mean, sweetheart? I heard footsteps. Like someone was going back and forth, back and forth. Then they stopped outside my door. It was probably just the house settling, Linda said too quickly. Old houses make noises at night. Sophie shook her head. It wasn't the house. I could feel someone looking at me through the door. I pulled the covers over my head until they went away. That night, Marcus reviewed the logs for the first time in weeks. His blood went cold when he saw the entries. Second floor hallway, motion detected 3 hours 18 minutes and 44 seconds. Second floor hallway, motion detected 3 hours 19 minutes and 2 seconds. Second floor hallway, motion detected 3 hours 19 minutes and 21 seconds. Second floor hallway, motion detected 3 hours 19 minutes and 38 seconds. Second floor hallway, motion detected 3 hours 19 minutes and 55 seconds. Sophie's room doorway, motion detected 3 hours 20 minutes and 11 seconds. The path had changed. He scrolled back through previous nights, his hands trembling. The change had begun 3 days ago, subtle at first, a brief pause at Sophie's door before continuing to the master bedroom. Then longer pauses. Then multiple passes through the hallway. And now this, the presence stopping at Sophie's door, lingering there in the darkness while his daughter lay terrified beneath her blankets. Police Non-Emergency Report 12/05 Case # 2024-7891 Caller. Marcus Harmon Address, 447 Crescent Oak Drive. Caller reports ongoing security system anomalies and requests welfare check. Officers dispatched at 9:15. No signs of forced entry or intrusion found. All doors and windows secure. Residence appears well maintained and secure. Homeowner showed officers security footage which officers describe as inconclusive. No evidence of criminal activity. Officer notes, Mr. Harmon appears sleep-deprived and distressed. Suggested he contact security company or electrician. Case closed. No police action required. Marcus began sleeping on the floor outside Sophie's room. He told Linda it was temporary just until they figured out what was happening. Every night, he lay in the dark with a baseball bat beside him, listening to the footsteps that only the sensors could see. And every night the path changed a little more. The presence spent less time at the master bedroom doorway and more time in the second-floor hallway. More time outside Sophie's room. Once, Marcus watched the security app as the sensor registered continuous activity outside his daughter's door for 43 minutes. 43 minutes of something invisible standing in the darkness, doing nothing, waiting for nothing, just existing in a space where it should not be. He researched the house obsessively. The previous owners, he learned, had not left due to foreclosure or divorce. They had simply abandoned the property one night, leaving behind furniture, clothing, personal photographs. They had not responded to the bank's attempts at contact, had not filed change of address forms, had not even informed their employers. They had vanished as completely as if they had never existed. He found records of the owners before them. A single mother and her young son who had sold the house after only 8 months. The mother's name appeared in news archives from 20 years ago, a car accident that had killed her son and left her hospitalized for months with injuries from which she never fully recovered. She had died in a psychiatric facility 15 years later, never having spoken again. Before them, another family. Before them, another. The records went back 70 years, and every occupancy ended in tragedy or flight. Deaths, disappearances, institutionalizations. The house consumed families the way fire consumes kindling, and somehow despite all of this new families kept moving in. Marcus found one reference that made his blood freeze. A newspaper clipping from 1967, yellowed and barely legible, about a child who had died in the house under unexplained circumstances. The child's name was Thomas Waring. He had been 7 years old, the same age as Sophie. The article mentioned that Thomas had complained of seeing a man who wasn't there, in the weeks before his death. His parents had dismissed his fears as childish imagination. One morning they found him dead in his bed, his face frozen in an expression of absolute terror, his hands raised as if to ward off something only he could see. The coroner had ruled it a heart attack, though such events were vanishingly rare in healthy children. The family had moved out immediately afterward. The article quoted the father as saying, "Something lives in that house. We couldn't see it but Thomas could. And whatever it is, it wanted him." Marcus showed the article to Linda. She read it 3 times, her face growing paler with each pass. When she looked up at him, her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "We have to leave. Tonight." "And go where?" "We have nowhere to go. We'll find somewhere. A hotel, my sister's place, anywhere but here." "Linda, listen to me." "No, you listen." Her voice cracked with terror and fury. "This thing, whatever it is, used to stop at our doorway. Now it stops at Sophie's. It's getting closer to her, Marcus. Every night it's getting closer. If we don't leave. If we leave, we lose everything. The house is underwater. We can't sell it. We can't walk away from the mortgage without destroying our credit, our futures. Our futures don't matter if our daughter is dead." The words hung in the air between them, heavy and true. Marcus wanted to argue, wanted to find a logical response, but there was none. Whatever was happening in their house was beyond logic, beyond reason, beyond the comfortable categories of natural and explainable. "One more night," he said finally. "Let me try something. If it doesn't work, we leave tomorrow." Linda stared at him for a long moment. Then slowly she nodded. That night Marcus didn't just wait. He prepared. He set up every camera they owned throughout the house, covering every angle of the path the presence walked. He borrowed an infrared camera from a photographer friend, the kind that could detect heat signatures invisible to the naked eye. He placed voice recorders in every room, set to activate at the slightest sound. He scattered flour on the floor of the second-floor hallway, fine and white, to catch any footprints that might be left behind. He checked the security app at 3 hours exactly. The basement sensor was dark. The house was quiet. At 3 hours 17 minutes and 22 seconds, the basement sensor activated. Marcus watched the path begin. Stairs. Hallway. Living room. Through the infrared camera feed on his laptop, he saw nothing, just empty rooms, sensors blinking at empty air. But the flower was different. As the hallway sensor triggered, he saw indentations appearing in the white powder. Not footprints exactly. Something else. Circular impressions, dozens of them moving across the floor in a line. As if the thing that walked had no feet but something else entirely. Something with too many points of contact. Something that moved in a way no human body could move. The pattern in the flower stretched the entire length of the hallway. Where a person would have left 2 parallel lines of footprints, this left a wide swath of clustered indentations, like the track of some massive centipede or the belly-dragging trail of a serpent dotted with countless small legs. And it was heading toward Sophie's room. Marcus ran. He threw himself up the stairs 3 at a time, his heart hammering against his ribs, the baseball bat gripped so tightly his knuckles ached. The flower in the hallway was disturbed, the trail of impossible indentations leading directly to Sophie's door, where the sensor was blinking its terrible red light. He burst into her room and found her sitting up in bed, her eyes wide and fixed on something he couldn't see. Sophie. Sophie, honey, look at me. She didn't respond. Her gaze remained locked on a point in the corner of her room, near the closet, where the shadows seemed somehow deeper than they should be. Her mouth was moving, forming words without sound, as if she were having a conversation he couldn't hear. Sophie. He grabbed her shoulders, shook her gently. Sophie, you need to wake up. You need to come with me right now. He says he's been waiting, Sophie whispered. He says he's been waiting such a long time. The temperature in the room dropped. Marcus could see his breath misting in the air, could feel the cold seeping into his bones. The closet door, which he was certain had been closed, now stood slightly ajar. From somewhere inside came a sound like breathing, slow and rhythmic and wrong. Who says that, sweetheart? Who's been waiting? The man who walks at night. Sophie's voice was dreamy, disconnected. He says he used to watch Thomas too. Thomas was his friend. He wants me to be his friend now. Marcus felt ice crystallize in his veins. Thomas Waring. The boy who had died in this house 60 years ago. The boy who had complained of seeing a man who wasn't there. Sophie, we're leaving. Right now. He scooped her out of bed, holding her against his chest as he backed toward the door. She was still staring at the corner, still moving her lips in that silent conversation. The closet door opened wider. Marcus didn't wait to see what emerged. He ran. Linda met him in the hallway, her face white with terror. What's happening? What's wrong with Sophie? Get the car keys. We're leaving. They fled into the night, Sophie held between them like something precious and fragile. Behind them, every sensor in the house was triggering, blinking in sequence like a cascade of falling dominoes. The basement. The stairs. Every room on every floor. The entire house was alive with the invisible presence, no longer content to walk its quiet path, now moving everywhere, filling every space. Marcus glanced back as he shoved Linda and Sophie into the car. The house looked the same as always, cream brick, black shutters, wraparound porch, but every window was lit from within by the blinking of motion sensors. Red lights pulsed behind curtains like the beating of a massive, malevolent heart. They drove to a motel 30 miles away and checked in under false names. Linda held Sophie while Marcus paced the small room, his phone open to the security app, watching the logs fill with entries faster than he could read them. Basement, motion detected 4 hours 15 minutes and 3 seconds. First floor hallway, motion detected 4 hours 15 minutes and 4 seconds. Living room, motion detected 4 hours 15 minutes and 4 seconds. Dining room, motion detected 4 hours 15 minutes and 5 seconds. Kitchen, motion detected 4 hours 15 minutes and 5 seconds. Stairs, motion detected 4 hours 15 minutes and 6 seconds. Second floor hallway, motion detected 4 hours 15 minutes and 6 seconds. Sophie's room, motion detected 4 hours 15 minutes and 7 seconds. Master bedroom, motion detected 4 hours 15 minutes and 7 seconds. Attic, motion detected 4 hours 15 minutes and 8 seconds. It was in every room simultaneously. It was everywhere and nowhere. It was angry. The entries continued through the night, an endless cascade of triggers that showed something moving through every corner of their abandoned home. By morning, the log contained over 3,000 entries. The app stopped updating at 6 hours 47 minutes and 33 seconds, when the system finally crashed from the overwhelming data load. Secure more solutions, automated system alert type, system overload location, 447 Crescent Oak Drive time, 6 hours 47 minutes and 33 seconds. The security system at this location has recorded an unprecedented volume of motion detection events, 3,247 logged in 2 hours 32 minutes, and has entered protective shutdown. This behavior is not consistent with any known malfunction or environmental factor. A technician has been automatically dispatched. If you believe this alert is an error, please contact customer support. The technician who arrived at the house that morning was Dale, the same man who had installed the system months ago. He entered the house alone, expecting to find a failed sensor or damaged wiring. His service report, filed 3 hours later, was the last communication he ever sent to his employer. Technician Service Note 12/07 Site, 447 Crescent Oak Drive arrived on site 8:45. House appears unoccupied. All doors locked, used owner-authorized override code to enter. Initial inspection reveals all sensors functioning. No visible damage. System log shows 3,247 motion events during overnight period. Reviewing footage now. Something is wrong. The cameras show empty rooms, but the sensors are triggering in sequence. I can see the lights blinking on the footage. One room after another. But there's nothing moving. There's nothing there. I'm going to do a full walkthrough. Check every note. Service report ends here. No additional text was entered. Dale never returned to his van. His equipment was found scattered throughout the house. Tool belt in the living room, diagnostic tablet on the stairs, flashlight in the second-floor hallway. The front door was standing open. His van remained in the driveway for 3 days before police were contacted. Police Incident Report 12/10, case hashtag 2024-8234 location, 447 Crescent Oak Drive. Officers dispatched regarding abandoned vehicle and missing person. Dale Morrison, 54, employee of Secure Home Solutions. Vehicle registration confirmed to Mr. Morrison. Employer reports he was dispatched to this address on December 7 and has not been heard from since. Officers conducted search of premises. All motion sensors in residence found to be in activated state, lights blinking continuously despite no visible movement. Electromagnetic interference noted by Officer Delgado, radio malfunctioned upon entry, restored upon exit. Notable, during search of second floor, multiple officers reported feeling observed despite thorough clearing of all rooms. Officer Kim noted that his flashlight beam appeared to be bent when directed toward certain corners. House secured. Missing person investigation opened. Property owners, Harmon family, contacted at out-of-state location, declined to return to residence. Case status, active missing person. The Harmons did not return. They couldn't. Sophie had begun speaking in her sleep, carrying on conversations with someone named Thomas, describing games they would play together, places they would go. Sometimes she spoke in a voice that wasn't her own, deeper, older, with an accent that Marcus couldn't place but that sounded like it belonged to another era. Dr. Vance drove 6 hours to meet with them at the motel. She brought her equipment, though she admitted she was no longer certain it would help. She sat with Sophie for an hour, running her instruments over the little girl's sleeping form, asking questions that Sophie answered in that strange, borrowed voice. Who are you? I'm Thomas. I live in the house on Crescent Oak Drive. What do you want with Sophie? I want her to stay with me. I've been alone so long. The walking man says I can have a friend now. The walking man says she's perfect. Who is the walking man? Sophie's body went rigid. Her eyes snapped open, but the pupils were wrong, dilated completely, black pools that reflected no light. Her mouth stretched into a smile that split her face too wide, showing too many teeth. He's here, she said in a voice that came from everywhere and nowhere. He's always been here. He walks at night so you can see him coming. He stands in doorways so you know where he stops. He waited 17 minutes because that's how long it took Thomas to die. What happens after 17 minutes? He comes inside. The motel room's fire alarm triggered without warning, its shriek filling the small space. The lights flickered. The television turned on by itself, filling with static. And on Dr. Vance's EMF detector, the needle swung hard into the red and stayed there. He followed us, Marcus breathed. He followed Sophie. No, Dr. Vance said, her voice steady despite the terror in her eyes. He's been here all along. He's everywhere Sophie goes. She's his tether now. She's his doorway. They fled again. And again. 3 hotels in 3 nights, each time waking to find the security sensors they'd bought at a hardware store blinking their accusation, each time fleeing before whatever walked in their footsteps could complete its path. Marcus found an exorcist through a friend of a friend, a Catholic priest named Father Dominic who specialized in what the church quietly called extraordinary cases. He listened to their story without interrupting, studied Dr. Vance's data, and sat with Sophie while she slept. This is not a demonic entity, he said finally. This is something older. Something that predates the categories we use for such things. It's not possessing your daughter, not exactly. It's accompanying her. Waiting for the right moment. To do what? To take her where Thomas went. Where all the others went. Wherever that is. Can you stop it? Father Dominic was silent for a long time. I can try. The ritual took place on the winter solstice, the longest night of the year, in a church that had stood for 200 years and had seen its share of darkness. Father Dominic worked through the midnight hours, reciting prayers in Latin, anointing Sophie with oils that smelled of frankincense and myrrh, calling upon forces that Marcus had never believed in but that now seemed like the only hope remaining. Sophie lay on the altar, pale and still, her breathing shallow. At intervals, her body would convulse, and that terrible smile would cross her face, and a voice that was not hers would speak words and languages that Father Dominic said had not been spoken since the time of Babylon. The walking man is angry, Sophie said, her eyes rolling back in her head. He says I belong to him now. He says you can't take what's already been given. She was never given, Marcus shouted, his voice breaking. We never agreed to this. We never knew. The house knows, Sophie whispered. The house has always known. Every family that comes, every child that sleeps within its walls, they're all gifts. They're all offerings. And the walking man accepts them all, one by one, year by year, forever and ever. Father Dominic's prayers grew more fervent. The candles on the altar flickered and nearly died. Somewhere in the darkness outside the church, motion sensor lights began triggering, one after another, in a line that led from the parking lot to the front door. He was coming. Marcus checked his phone and saw the alerts from the security system they'd left at the motel. The pattern was there, impossibly transmitting across miles of distance. Motel room 114, motion detected 17 minutes and 3 seconds. Motel hallway, motion detected 17 minutes and 35 seconds. Motel exterior, motion detected 18 minutes and 12 seconds. Highway 7. Motion detected 18 minutes and 47 seconds. County Road 15, motion detected 19 minutes and 23 seconds. Church parking lot, motion detected 19 minutes and 58 seconds. Church entrance, motion detected 20 minutes and 34 seconds. He was tracking them. Following Sophie's spiritual scent across the landscape, walking his patient walk through the darkness, coming to claim what he believed was his. The church doors burst open. Every light in the building went out. And in the absolute darkness, Marcus heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, and accompanied by a sound like many smaller feet scuttling in their wake. The sound from the flower in the hallway. The thing that had left those impossible tracks. Father Dominic's voice rose to a shout, his Latin prayers becoming a kind of battle cry. Sophie screamed, a sound of pure terror that seemed to come from both her and from somewhere far away, as if she were screaming across a vast distance. The darkness in the doorway coalesced. It didn't become visible exactly. There was no shape, no form, nothing for the eye to latch onto. But the absence became somehow more present, more aware. The emptiness took on weight and intention. And within that emptiness, something moved. Marcus felt it pass by him, a cold so profound it burned, a pressure against his mind like fingers pressing through his skull. He fell to his knees, gasping, and through tear-blurred eyes he saw the impossible thing reach the altar where his daughter lay. And then Sophie spoke, but this time it was her own voice. Small and frightened and 7 years old. I'm not afraid of you anymore, she said. The pressure in the room shifted. The thing at the altar hesitated. Thomas was afraid, Sophie continued. He was always afraid and that's why you could take him. But I'm not Thomas. And I don't belong to you. She sat up on the altar, reaching into the pocket of her dress, and pulled out something that Marcus couldn't quite see. A small object that glinted in the candlelight. No, that created its own light, a warm golden glow that pushed back against the darkness. Later, Sophie would explain that Thomas had given it to her. The real Thomas, not the voice that had spoken through her. In one of her dreams she had found him in the house, a sad little boy who had been trapped between life and death for 60 years, unable to move on because the walking man held him fast. He had told her the walking man's secret, that he was not a demon, not a ghost, but something older, a creature from the spaces between seconds, the gaps in reality where time grew thin. He walked his path every night because that was the ritual that fed him, the repetition that kept him anchored to the world. And he stood in doorways for 17 minutes because that was the moment of maximum vulnerability, when the barrier between his world and ours grew thin enough for him to reach through. But Thomas had also told her how to stop him. In life, Thomas had worn a locket containing a photograph of his mother, the only reminder of the world outside the house, the only anchor to love and warmth and humanity. The walking man had hated it, had been unable to approach while Thomas wore it. But on the night Thomas died, he had taken it off to bathe. And in that moment of vulnerability, the walking man had reached through. The locket had been lost, fallen between the floorboards of Thomas's room. For 60 years it had lain there, waiting. And in Sophie's dreams, Thomas had shown her exactly where to find it. She held it up now, a small gold heart on a delicate chain, and the darkness recoiled. "Go back," Sophie said, her voice growing stronger. "Go back to wherever you came from. You can't have me. You can't have Thomas. You can't have anyone ever again." The thing in the darkness screamed. It was a sound like reality tearing, like the death of stars, like every nightmare ever suffered made audible. The church windows shattered outward in a spray of stained glass. The altar cracked down the middle. Father Dominic was thrown against the wall, unconscious. But the golden light held. It grew brighter, spreading from Sophie's outstretched hand, filling the church with warmth and radiance. And in that light, Marcus saw, just for an instant, what had been hunting them. It was vast. It was ancient. It was made of angles that didn't exist in normal space, geometries that the human mind couldn't process. It had no face, but it had hunger. It had no eyes, but it had attention. And it was looking at Sophie with an expression that might have been hatred, might have been fear, might have been something that had no name in any human language. Then the light consumed it. The creature folded in on itself, retreating through dimensions that Marcus couldn't perceive, shrinking away from the warmth and love and humanity that radiated from his daughter's hand. The scuttling sound faded. The cold lifted. The pressure on Marcus's mind released. And in the silence that followed, Marcus heard a child's voice, not Sophie's but similar, say, "Thank you," before fading into nothing at all. Thomas was free. They never returned to 447 Crescent Oak Drive. The house was condemned 6 months later after a fire of unknown origin reduced it to ashes. The security system, still transmitting despite the conflagration, sent one final series of alerts before falling silent forever. Basement, motion detected 3 hours 17 minutes and 42 seconds. Stairs, motion detected 3 hours 18 minutes and 15 seconds. First floor hallway, motion detected 3 hours 18 minutes and 44 seconds. Living room, motion detected 3 hours 19 minutes and 23 seconds. Dining room, motion detected 3 hours 20 minutes and 1 second. Kitchen, motion detected 3 hours 20 minutes and 38 seconds. First floor hallway, motion detected 3 hours 21 minutes and 15 seconds. Stairs, motion detected 3 hours 21 minutes and 47 seconds. Second floor hallway, motion detected 3 hours 22 minutes and 19 seconds. Master bedroom doorway, motion detected 3 hours 22 minutes and 47 seconds. Master bedroom doorway, motion detected 3 hours 22 minutes and 48 seconds. Master bedroom doorway, motion detected 3 hours 22 minutes and 49 seconds. The entries continued, 1 per second, for exactly 17 minutes. Then they stopped. The walking man never came back. Sophie grew up to become a psychologist specializing in childhood trauma, helping other children who claimed to see things that weren't there. She kept Thomas's locket in a drawer of her desk, never worn but always close. Sometimes, late at night when she was the last one in the office, she would feel a cold spot pass through the hallway, and she would hold the locket in her hand until the feeling passed. She knew, with the certainty of someone who had faced the darkness and survived, that the walking man was not unique. There were others like him, lurking in the thin places of the world, waiting for their chance to reach through. And as long as there were motion sensors and security cameras and all the other technology designed to detect the unseeable, there would be families like hers, ordinary people who thought they were installing protection but were actually opening windows into places that should remain forever closed. The last entry in Marcus Harmon's handwritten log, recovered from the ashes of the house, read, "Final observation, Harmon. We thought we were keeping something out. We never considered that we might be letting something in. The sensors don't detect intruders. They detect attention. They show you where something is looking. And once you know it's looking, it knows you know. That's when it starts to walk. The end.